Hi, I'm Joe Lindsay. Welcome to How's the Form, a podcast for men in, let's say, the second half of life, like myself, over 50.
How's the Form is brought to you by AgeNI and is part of the Good Vibrations Over 50s Men's Health Programme, which is funded by Movember.
My guest this week is an award-winning novelist, filmmaker and screenwriter. He's a professor of creative writing and director of the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's University, Belfast. Also, one of the nattiest dressers you'll see around these parts, darling. It's Glenn Patterson. So Glenn, how's the form?
The form is pretty good. Head cold, but you know.
Apart from that?
Apart from the head cold, I'm doing all right.
You are looking rather resplendent, as always.
It's just...
Which reminds me, do you remember the first time we met?
Well, I was going to say we met for the first time at the BBC,
No.
but we met before that.
We
Okay.
did.
Okay.
You and I met in Roscoff Restaurant because we were both nominated for Ulster
Oh!
Tatler's Best Dressed
Oh,
Men.
I remember that.
We were both nominated, and of course you won. As you can see, clearly, that was
did
the
win.
first time we met.
That's
You
right.
did win that year.
That's right. Yeah, it was the Northern Woman.
Yeah.
Northern Woman. Best dressed. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And then I came second, and then Paul Stafford came third.
And I remember. I can nearly even tell you what year that was because
I don't know the year. What year was it?
Well,
Late 90s anyway.
Eric Cantona was just leaving Man United.
Was it 97 or 98?
I think it's after. Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, it must be late 90s.
Late 90s for sure.
Yeah. Can you remember what you were wearing?
I remember, and this is going to sound terribly glamorous, I remember I was wearing a polyester, 1970s polyester disco shirt with a 1970s suit, which was probably very polyester as well.
See, I remember I was in, I used to live in Manchester. I was living in Manchester at that stage, and no, I'd been living in Manchester, so I just moved back. And there was it was a time of natural linens and everything. There was a shop in Manchester that was just called Fake. And it was all man-made fibres, so I was dressing entirely out of that until I went to Australia for the first time. And as soon as I stepped off the plane, all my clothes shriveled in the sunshine because they weren't made for strong heat.
Nobody had any naked flames near me.
Yeah.
They were worried about my. I had a quiff then, and I had I think I probably had hairspray on it. I was a real serious health concern, I think, safety concern.
I got to tell you about I they gave me when I won that they gave, among the things they gave us was a huge bunch of lilies, and so
That's right.
I got this huge bunch of lilies, and then I think I went and did a radio thing. I can't remember who interviewed me. Somebody at Radio Ulster who said, "What do you call your wee style?"
Your wee
What do
style.
you call your wee style? Anyway, so then I ended up very, very drunk that day, and I woke up the next day, and Ali, my wife, was working at the Lyric, and I went to get a shower, and I looked and I went, oh my God, I've got jaundice. And my whole face was yellow, and all down here was yellow. And I phoned Ali up and I said, I'm really, really sick, really, really sick. And I drove over to the Lyric and I was showing her, and she said, where are the lilies? Look at your hands. And it was all the
yellow
from the
yeah.
Is that when we first met?
That was when we first met. When I met you then, you were maybe 2 or 3 books in. And now you're
90s, yeah, 17.
17 books in now.
Yeah, 17
Your
books.
latest book, 2 Summers, which I enjoyed immensely.
Thank you.
And I kind of want to talk about it because it's a story of two people having 2 different summers.
Yeah.
One here in Belfast and one in New York City. And not so much parallels, but just how these kind of summers happen. And one is very sort of gritty and realistic. And the other one is this beautiful but sort of quite sad fantasy as well. I want to ask you about that book, where that idea came from.
So the 2 summers are 2 novellas, and the central characters are both teenage boys, Belfast boys. One working for the summer road sweeping in Belfast, and the other one sent by his mum to New York to live with his aunt to get him out of trouble at home. So they're both sort of late 70s, just coming into the 1980s, one of them. And I think, the funny thing is I wrote them separately, and it took me ages before I thought they could actually go together and just make a book out of them. So the one called Summer on the Road, about the road sweeping, I think I probably wrote first. And then the other one, the kid who goes off to New York, it's 1977, and he stumbles on the Shangri-Las, who were the 3 surviving Shangri-Las, one of them had died, were recording that summer in New York at Sire Records. And I'd always wanted to write something about about the Shangri-Las and about them. I wanted to know what it was like to have been in a huge group when you were still in your teens, and then while you were still in your 20s, for that all to go, and all the fame and everything that went with it to go, and then to try and piece something back together of that, which the Shangri-Las did in the late 1970s. 3 of them got together. They're all 29, 30. So I wanted to write about them, but I couldn't really come at it. So I did the thing that I occasionally do, which is I just get somebody else and stick them on a footpath across the street. And that's what my Jem, he calls himself Jem, because he goes to New York and it's all about reinvention. So he's Jem.
There's that lovely bit when he's in New York, he meets this young girl. I don't want to give too much away because you really should read this book. It's fabulous. The 2 novellas are fantastic. And he starts going like the thrift shops, as they call them, and he just buys this crazy outfit where he completely reinvents that idea of kind of reinvention. And what I loved about it was anybody I know that ever left Belfast to go somewhere else did exactly that. Yeah. A friend of mine went to London and all of a sudden he was wearing fur coats and he bleached his hair and he was like, and it's particularly that point in Belfast where Belfast seems sort of very grey and brown. Belfast was grey and brown at that point. Yeah. I mean, was that something when you were growing up? Did you kind of have it because you are a fabulous dresser, you're flamboyant and stylish. I mean, for me, because in my teens, I sort of started doing that. To me, it was a reaction. It was my revolution against what was happening.
When I went away to England, I actually had picked out a name for myself. I was going to start to write, and I was going to write under a different name. It wasn't going to be Glenn Patterson. It was going to be Henry Coughlin.
Henry Coughlin?
Yeah, because Henry was the most English name I could think of. And there was a runner, wasn't the mile runner, Eamon Coughlin?
Oh, yeah.
Great Irish runner.
Right.
So I thought, okay, really English name and a really an Irish surname. I'll stick those together, and that kind of got me what I, both senses of what I felt. Of course, I never did do it, but I was, that kind of thing about being somebody else, the opportunity of being somebody else when you go away. So yeah, that was kind of in it. And both the characters in those novellas are around about 16, 17, which I think is, the great age. I loved being 17 in Belfast for all that was going on at that time. There's just that thing, and actually my younger daughter is 17 at the minute, and there's that thing of the whole thing opens up for you, and you feel right across this place, you feel like it's yours, or the world is. It doesn't have to be just your city, so your horizons are expanding a wee bit. So I think that was probably not intentional, but I think probably the age, if you would ask me what age are my characters, there's always a bit about them being about 17. Yeah. Because I think that was the age I began to. Maybe after 17, I don't think I've changed an awful lot. And the other age, I've got a novel called The Rest Just Follows.
That's beautiful.
Which takes 3 characters, and I just had them start secondary school. I thought, take the moment they start secondary school, because again, it's one of those moments where you come out of wherever you live. You went to primary school, probably in your neighbourhood, and then when you go to secondary school, you go a little bit further. Maybe you have to take a bus, and all of those things that allow you an amount of independence, and also you then meet other people from other bits of the city or other bits even of, a bit further afield in your own neighbourhood. And so your world expands a little bit, and I just followed those 3 characters from the age of about 11, 12 through to probably into their 40s at that stage. And but yeah, I think you begin to be, and maybe you begin to remember more clearly things about yourself from about the age of about 11, 12, but definitely 16, 17. All my tastes and vices were established, and really a lot of the decades since then was shedding as many of the vices as possible.
You look incredibly young for your age. I don't mean you're over.
Yeah, I'm 62.
In terms of your health, are you very aware of your diet and very aware of exercise and things like that?
I stopped eating meat in 1989. I mean, I kept eating fish, and I still eat fish, but I substantially vegetarian for that 34 years. I once ate around a sausage on a plane because I was so starving. When they used to give you, usually you get something that's got meat on, and you say, no, I don't. The sausage touched that, but I just lifted the sausage and ate Potato.
It wasn't an easy.
Hash browns.
It was not an easy time to be a vegetarian.
No, it wasn't.
I was vegetarian for 3 years when I was at university. And my mother thought I'd joined a cult. Like my mother, to be vegetarian to her was just like, what? She was appalled.
Yeah.
And what beat me was when I came home, my mum was making bacon sandwiches. And that's what got me back on the meat wagon. And my mum she nearly cried when I started eating meat again. She was so happy. But back then, being a vegetarian was very, very difficult.
It was really difficult. And I kept eating fish, I think, partly because, if I was going to see my parents or even going out.
As you get older, are you kind of more aware of your health? Is it something that you kind of, not to become like a hypochondriac, but
Well, I notoriously am hypochondriac.
Are you really?
Well, I think maybe when I was younger, I was always, but when I smoked, I think things are bad for you, and I smoked. I was always getting cancer of the tongue. Look at going to the doctor and say, no, you maybe burnt yourself or something. I would always be examining things, and I had a really bad chest. And still, like if I get a cold, there's always that thing, will it go to your chest? So I stopped smoking and then went back on after about 7 years, and then finally quit again about 19, somewhere in the 90s. I remember going to a doctor once when I was maybe about 40. Maybe a bit younger, but I remember him saying there are only 2 ages, under 35 and over.
That's it.
Yeah, he said so. He said over 35, different rules apply.
Yeah.
So I don't exercise terribly much. I walk a fair bit, but I don't think of that. I don't think I'm doing it for exercise. I just walk a fair bit. And I start the morning with 30 or 40 press-ups.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 30 if I'm feeling a bit ropey.
Yeah. At least you're doing them.
Yeah. And actually some days I'm really slow to get out of bed because I think I'm going to have to do them. I'm going to have to walk past the bit of the floor where I do them.
Yeah.
It's right at the foot of the bed, So I just lie there for as long as possible. And then there are some days where, the thing when you were young and you'd be like, if they don't wake me up now, I'll be too late for school, as you lay there awake.
Yeah.
So there's some days where I think, if I don't get up in the next couple of minutes, I'm really not going to have time for the 30 press-ups. So that's it. That's my regime. I don't sleep very well. When I say I don't sleep very well, I haven't slept well for truly decades.
Is that because, though, being a creative person, that you constantly have ideas in your mind and they kind of keep you awake, and you kind of, the inspiration comes at various, it doesn't just come 9 to 5.
No, I fall asleep really quickly. I can go to sleep. I wake up usually after any time between 2 and 5. Right. I'll wake up, and I have a notebook by my bed. I might have a notebook in my pocket. No, I don't have it in my pocket. I probably left it over there when we were sitting down here. And there's a notebook by the bed, and if I think of anything, I'm very practiced at just lying out over the side of the bed and writing. I fold it open before I go to sleep, and I try and scribble things down so that I don't even think about it again. So, but I don't know. I don't sleep terribly well, and I would, that's the worst time to be thinking about anything. It's rarely creative things. It's more often, I don't know, family things, money things, world things. Yeah. Why did I say that last night? Things, all that kind of stuff. So I don't sleep. Sleep has been a big problem, and I've gone several times to the doctors. About that, and I say doctors because it's been plural, and I get prescribed sleeping tablets, and I take them home and I look at them and I think, are you really going to start this? Are you really going to? So then I go out to I go to the health food shop or the health store, and I get a new lavender thing that I rub on my wrists, and I think I'll try that, and I go to bed like this, and 2 or 3 nights it's fine, and then the fourth night, you wake up again at 3. And the lavender gets set in the mantelpiece, and that's the end of it. So
I'm just picturing a mantelpiece full of sleeping pills and lavender and all this.
It's not. Yeah, I think. Do you know what I am? I am really worried about using medicines, prescribed medicines, to deal with anything that is a mental health thing. And I know. So when I was.
Is that something you're aware of, the mental health thing? Is it something you're aware? You take steps to look after your mental health?
I had some kind of breakdown in 1989, June of 1989 it started. And so my first novel was out, came out in 1988. And I'd moved back here from Manchester. And I had a post with the Arts Council of Northern Ireland as a writer in the community. But it was before that. I was living just on my own in a flat in Belfast. And I had a breakdown. And this will sound... I don't even know how to explain this. It happened around the time of Tiananmen Square.
Right.
And you know that extraordinary footage of the tank and the guy in front of the tank with the shopping bags? And I had this thing that I think when we imagine ourselves and we see something like that, you always think, I will be the person with the shopping bags in front of the tank.
Right.
You never think, I'll be the tank driver.
Yeah.
I will never be the person who could do harm. And there were a couple of other things like this that I had, that I could picture still. And I thought, I always imagine myself, we always imagine ourselves the victim or the person who stands up to violence, never the perpetrator of violence. And I don't know, something around then I thought, but that's not the case. If that was the case, it wouldn't keep happening. It's because people like us end up driving tanks, end up. So anyway, I went to the doctor and I wanted a guarantee that I could do no harm to people, and of course there is no guarantee. And that was the start of. I had a pretty full on breakdown.
Wow.
It sounds really odd saying it, but I know
I know
that's what started it.
But we were in an environment of violence here.
Yeah.
So it was something. I mean, you look at how we resonate now with what's happening, in Palestine. We resonate with things like that, and we did then. Tiananmen Square. I know a lot of people here resonate with that. And when you're in an environment of violence, you kind of think, well, you can go one of two paths here, which everyone could. I grew up in Belfast. I grew up in North. I could have went down that path, but I chose not to. The other people I knew who weren't so lucky or were more willing to do that. So that's actually quite a natural emotion, I think.
Yeah, and I just had this thought that I actually, and I say this kind of, I don't say this lightly, I got to the point where I thought I'd rather not live than live with the possibility that you could do harm to another person. So that's kind of where I got to. And it was as ever, there was so much other stuff going on. There was relationship stuff going on. There was, I just published my first novel. I was trying to write the second one. It hadn't, when you're writing a first book, nobody in the world is expecting, nobody knows you're doing it, so it's fine, and then it comes out, and then the first question that's asked is, where's the next one? Yeah. And then, oh God, I haven't got the next one. So you start, so I was, there were a lot of other things going on, but it was a proper breakdown, and I remember my parents coming round and me trying to explain this to them. And I ended up at City Hospital, and I wanted psychotherapy. And the doctors who assessed me at City Hospital said that they thought I needed antidepressants. And so they, as they described it, they just said, if you had a physical ailment, you take medicine for that. This is an ailment that needs an adjustment, and the antidepressants will kind of help adjust. So again, I got the prescription, and I took it home, and I thought, I don't want that. I don't want to take, because what I didn't want to interfere with was the kind of the haphazard nature of thought process. For me as a writer, I didn't want anything cauterized. I wanted, for good or ill, I wanted the mind to go where the mind would go. Right. And so I never took antidepressants. So in the few times that's recurred, and it has happened periodically, I think I got to the point where I would try to anticipate it, like could you feel something coming on, and try and head it off. But a couple of times it sort of got the better of me, and again you'd be back looking for some kind. I always wanted a talking therapy, and they always wanted to give me medicine, and I just I never really wanted to take that. A few years ago I went to the doctor talking about physical health and going to the doctor. And so I went to see the doctor, and I told him, among other things, I wasn't sleeping, and he went through and he said, anything happened recently? I said, well, my dad died a few months ago. He said, okay, stop there. How are you feeling about that? And I said, well, it was tough. He was diagnosed with cancer in September and he was dead by the 7th of October. So, it was all, a bit disorienting. And I did end up, he suggested maybe going and talking to somebody. And I went, and I'm also passionate about the National Health Service, by the way. I would be disinclined to pay for anything, not because I'm cheap, just because I don't think we should. I think we pay. That's what the National Health Service is for. And I ended up getting some grief counselling, and for a few weeks, and that was really, it was brilliant talking about ages and stages in your life and when do you become yourself. I had this notion. I wrote a novel called Where Are We Now? And it was about a man who was, I wrote this while I was in my 50s, but he was 60. And all the things that he thought defined him, his job, his marriage, all those things had fallen away.
That book is a beautiful exploration of the male psyche, by the way.
Well, thank you. What I thought was, what happens when all those things by which you define yourself are taken away? Who are you? And so he's in that position where all the things that he thought were him have gone. So who are you? And I had that novel starts with a guy looking at old photographs. You don't know that he's looking at old photographs, but he's looking at old photographs and he's thinking, who is this guy? He thinks somebody's been impersonating him because there are all these driving licenses and they have his name on it, but he doesn't recognize this person. So I had this thought that perhaps instead of being this continuous line, we are these discrete things, little units of you, 6-year-old Joe, 12-year-old Joe. And actually the only thing that kind of holds them together are stories that other people tell you about what you were like. But you just think that you're not that person. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, totally. No, I totally agree because I attended grief counselling. I lost one of my best friends a number of years ago. He was only 40 when he died. And I was in my mid 40s. And I found it very difficult to deal with because he was my best mate and he the circumstances of his death were not good either. But then by the time I went to do it, I kind of felt like I was okay, because he had died in July, but in November I said, I think I need to do this. And my first up was booked in January. But I had a really nice Christmas. I thought, I'm actually okay. I went to the first meeting, which is like, as you know, they kind of do the assessment. Yeah. And I went in, I said, this is kind of a waste. I'm really sorry I'm wasting your time. I actually feel okay. Yeah. I was just seeing the girl was doing her PhD. And she said, well, why are you coming here anyway? And I said, my friend died. And as soon as I said, my friend died, I burst into tears and cried for an hour. Yeah. Because the thing is, everyone that knew me knew I was going through a bad time, but I never actually said the words. I didn't have to say to anybody, my friend died. But saying that just opened this massive floodgate. And I did the full, it was like 7 or 8 weeks or something. Yeah, I was like 6. And during that time, my aunt I love very much, she passed away. And that really helped me kind of deal with that as well. And I'm a big advocate of that, of going and talking to someone and sorting that out. Yeah. And I think now we're kind of more aware of doing that. The demographic of between 45 and 60 of men, mental health issues are quite high. Yeah. Because you get that point in your life where you do start to question your past. You start to question, where are we now? Where am I now? What sort of person am I? The stress of that can be monumental. Let's take a short break there and head over to the doctor's surgery for a reminder about some ways we can be a little bit healthier.
My name is Dr. Alan Stout and I'm a GP, and this week I'm going to talk about the importance of sleep. Alongside exercise and a healthy diet to fuel your body right, good sleep is one of the most important ingredients for health and well-being. Sleep is important for our brain health, our mood and our ability to cope with everyday life. When we're tired, we can't function at our best. Sleep helps you think more clearly, have quicker reflexes and focus better. Sometimes we've sacrificed sleep to fit in everything we want to do in our day, but sleep affects both mental and physical health, so it's vital to make sure we're getting enough, usually 7 to 8 hours a night. Sleep is really important in helping us to cope with stress, At this stage in life, we can encounter new challenges which can be difficult to cope with. Changes in our health, new caring responsibilities, work pressures or financial worries are a few examples. Everyday challenges can cause stress in our body and mind, making it harder to relax and to rest. If we imagine stress like the accelerator pedal on a car, when we're stressed, our nervous system pumps our adrenaline to ensure fight or flight, making us battle ready, energized, nervous or jumpy. Our heart rate might go up and we're powered up by this adrenaline rush. However, in the same way that a car can't drive in high gear for long, our brain is exactly the same. We can't go forever, or indeed for long, in this highly stimulated state, and eventually, like the car, we can also burn out. Rest and relaxation are like the brake pedal that calms our body and our organs down after the perceived stress or danger has passed, to help avoid the burnout. Good quality sleep to rest and relax our body and mind are really important for our physical and mental health. So how can we get a good night's sleep? I've said we should aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, but the quality of our sleep is just as important as the quantity. Sleep patterns change naturally as we age, becoming less deep, and we might wake more often during the night or earlier in the morning. And as men, we may need to pee more often in the night. If you have trouble sleeping, here are a few tips to help you get a good night's sleep. So get out in the fresh air. Exposure to daylight can reset the body's natural sleep rhythms. Minimize any napping and don't nap for any longer than 20 minutes if you absolutely have to. Reduce caffeine and alcohol intake and quit smoking. Don't eat too late in the evening. Move more during the day to keep rest and sleep cycles on track. Keep a regular routine for going to bed and waking up. Have a peaceful, quiet space to sleep and aim for complete darkness. Start winding down 90 minutes or so before you aim to go to sleep. Disconnect from devices like phones, iPads and laptops before going to bed, and practice breathing exercises to help you relax. If an extended period of poor sleep or stress is affecting your health, please do talk to your GP or seek other advice or support.
AgeNI's Good Vibrations programme is for men over 50. If you or someone you know could use some advice or support on health, well-being or mental health, there's lots more information online at ageni.org/iConnect. That's letter I, CONNECT. Or visit ageni.org/good vibrations to sign up for monthly emails with expert tips and information. Remember, it's okay not to feel okay. The AgeNI Good Vibrations team are here with help and support.
Did you ever have writer's block?
Yes. And I'm slightly ashamed to say I have had, lots of friends who are writers who say things like, did you ever hear of anybody having plumber's block? It's your job, do it, It's
not the same thing.
And I do have, there are times where, writing in some ways is, in lots of ways, it's hard. I mean, to sit down and kind of to fill a page, you can, when you do all kinds of little things to make yourself work, to write something. I started a novel called The International, set in the old International Hotel, back of the City Hall. And again, character was 16 in that. Lots of reasons why he was 16, but that's the age he was. And I remember starting that novel, and I'd been sitting for, it felt like months, nothing happening, nothing coming. And there was one morning, I told myself I couldn't get up from the desk until lunchtime. Right. Couldn't leave the room for anything. I just had to sit there. So I was flicking through Jonathan Barden's brilliant Belfast and Illustrated History, one of my favourite books. And came across a reference to a hotel, went to the index, looking up, other hotel. And there was the International. As soon as I saw the International, I went, oh, the International, my dad used to go there. I used to go for work stews. And then I knew that young barman called Peter Ward, who worked in the International, had been murdered in 1966. And within about an hour, I would say, I had the germ of that novel.
Right.
And it took me 3 years to complete it, but I had the germ of it. I knew what I was doing. I had the thing. So I think that strategies to give yourself something to do even when the writing isn't coming. I think that's the useful thing that you can learn with time.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's kind of mathematics. If you sit down often enough and you write words often enough, you will arrive at the stage where you have a book length.
Right.
You know, and it mightn't be much good, but at least you'll have it. And I teach creative writing at the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's University, and I have students who are, you know, writing novels. And I'm doing this because, you know, the manuscript.
Yeah.
I love the moment where you sit down and you've got the thing, and the first question you say is, "What is it?" I would say that to myself. What have I done? What have I got here? And then you start to read through, and, you know, the beginning, you're a little bit tentative, and then you write your way into sort of knowing it, and then you think, okay, I've got to wind it up here. So, you know, the job after that, and the bit I really love, is pulling it all together, getting rid of the stuff that doesn't fit, writing stuff in that it needs, filling gaps. That's the really enjoyable bit.
You have a very young mind. I think it's maybe a generational thing. When you look at when I look at photos of what my parents looked like when they were 40.
Yeah.
And they looked like they were like 60. No offense.
Yeah.
Whereas we're kind of a younger and stuff generation.
Yeah.
How do you kind of keep that young mind? How do you keep the curiosity and the sense of wonder?
I'm not sure about having a young mind, and I don't know. I mean, I think you're right about how we look in terms of, you know how older.
No, but even like they had the same responsibilities we have now.
Yeah.
But for them, it was a lot heavier.
Yeah.
A lot heavier.
I'm not. I mean, I had children late. But not late. I was 40 by the time my first daughter was born. So, you know, I did a lot of, you know, parenting, and in my parenting, I did parenting. Nobody ever did parenting when we were growing up. For work, I go to see a lot of stuff. I'm reading a lot of stuff. I like the word stuff.
Yeah,
I do.
You're
like
a very
the word
big music
stuff.
fan as well.
I'm a big music fan, and I listen to music constantly, and I sing a lot as well.
I've heard you can sing.
I
And
sing out loud.
you are a very good dancer. I've seen you dance.
Is this after the shots?
I would recommend it.
Do you know what? I'm going to tell you, I was in the car the other night. So I stopped the car, got out, and just as we were getting out of the car, Give Me Just a Little More Time by Chairman of the Board came on, right? Go. One of the great songs. So it was playing in the car, and I got out of the car, and I was singing it, walking across the empty car park. And as I was walking across, I could see a wee dog, and the wee dog was looking at me, and I was singing Give Me Just a Little More Time to the wee dog, and I was thinking, what are you tied up to? Because I can't. And then I looked, and the dog's owner was wearing a kind of like a full-length quilted black jacket and had merged into the background. So what I didn't realize was the dog wasn't tied up. It was on the end of a lead, and there was its owner. And I'm walking across the car park singing Give Me Just a Little More Time. And then I thought, I better not stop, because it looked like, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I sang Give Me Just a Little More Time.
I think it's joyous. I love people doing that. I use music a lot for my mental health. Mm-hmm. In that, like as you say, you try and head it off at the pass. Mm-hmm. So I think, right, I'm going to be at low today. Yeah. And I'm never ashamed of it. I have a low day. And I've said to people, there's times I've had to meet, I go, I can't do it today, I'm feeling a bit low. Yeah. But I'll put on a record I love that will totally lift me. It's like, right, okay, I'm all right now. Yeah.
And you know, the thing with music is, so that there is that extraordinary thing that the music we're talking about here, I mean, I'm taking it, you're not playing Bach cello concertos terribly often.
No.
And it is this art form that is best practiced, or in its purest form, is done by people who are very, very young. Yeah. And I think, you know, I've always thought about pop music that it is a holler against having to grow old.
Yes.
And so what you kind of listen to when you listen to those songs, you know, Summertime Blues, you know, what's that?
Louis by the Kingsmen.
Yeah, that's all of that.
Which is my favourite single of all time.
Really?
Yeah, because it's everything I want in a song. Yeah. And some of the lyrics are, you know, you can't decipher them. Yeah. But you even look at something like There's Nothing As Glorious. I think the greatest 7-inch single of all time is them, Gloria on the A side. Baby Please Don't Go. Yeah. That is the greatest 7-inch record of all time. Because both sides are impeccable, right? And when you get something like that, there's an absolute majesty and beauty in that little 7-inch record. Yeah. You know, there's a clip online of a guy sitting in a park And I hate the song, but he starts singing Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, right?
Yeah.
Just this guy sitting on a bench. The park's packed in the summer. He starts doing Tommy used to, and he starts singing it out loud, right?
Yeah.
Then when it gets to the chorus, the entire park goes, whoa, and they're like, everybody would be in great shape if we did this more often.
Yeah.
Because like just that thing of we don't sing out loud, we don't sort of do that.
Yeah.
I love it when I hear people sing out loud. People with headphones, they forget themselves.
Yes. Lately, and it is lately, I'm the director, gotta say this, I'm the director of the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's University.
Yeah.
I'm a novelist and screenwriter, I write for radio, I've done all kinds of things. The one thing I've never written is poetry.
How come? It's just not your thing, or?
I just was no good at it. You know, I started out trying to write poetry, but I didn't have that thing. That wasn't my way. I knew that I wanted to do something with words. So I think probably I just thought that means poetry. So I started trying to write poems. This is when I was at school, and I clearly wasn't a poet. But I worked at Seamus Heaney Centre. Seamus Heaney, as well as being poet, was a great translator, playwright, wrote a lot for television, radio. So that's what we do at the centre. There's all kinds of writing there. But a lot of my friends are poets. And I have what we were talking about, the joy of listening to music. Increasingly, I find myself reading poetry. There's a similarity, the intensity of the form produces something.
Yeah.
And I love novels, and I love, there are passages of prose that I would go to and I would read, but I do it usually for a different reason than I would do with poetry.
When you were writing the screenplay, you and Colin wrote a screenplay for Good Vibrations. That must have tapped into that 16-year-old you.
We actually wrote. We had Good Vibrations.
Because punk, I was kind of too young for punk.
Yeah,
I was too young for punk.
I was alongside it,
right.
Which is so. It wasn't that I was too young for it. It was just that it was kind of It was there, but I wasn't kind of fully plugged into it, and it took a little while for that. I think it was probably when I started listening to the local bands, like Outcasts and definitely the Undertones. You started to think, okay, this feels, I'm getting something even more exciting here. So Colin Carberry and I, when we wrote the screenplay for Good Vibrations, we started that. We were sitting across the table from one another. With two laptops, that's how we wrote in the very, very early days of that. And nearly every scene, we played a record. Yeah. We'd just say, okay, this is the scene where Terri hears Rudy for the first time, so we'll play big time.
But that beautiful scene where you allow our imagination to go to a place that's so familiar to us, and it has more impact the first time he hears Teenage Kicks. And we don't hear it as an audience. But in your head, you hear that, and you hear that, and his face as he looks through the glass is wonderful. Yeah, because that just you're like, I know exactly what he's listening to.
We had written that, so the two moments where hearing Teenage Kicks are important to Terri. The first time he hears it, and the time that John Peel plays it. Yeah, not for the first time, but the second time. Yeah. And as he did famously, that was so good. I'm going to do something I haven't done in years. I'm going to play it again. So he plays it twice in a row. And I think it was Colin's idea that we wouldn't have it in the studio at all, not even a snatch of it, that you had to save that. So that we wrote the script when we went back to the draft. That's the way we wrote it, that Terri is handed headphones.
Because I got goosebumps with that bit.
Yeah. But then
we all knew he was here.
So the direction is beautiful as well. So Glenn and Lisa's direction is absolutely beautiful. And then Richard Dormer playing Terri. Yeah. Listening, puts his hands up in the glass and then one hand slips. Yeah. It's just extraordinary. Beautiful. And then there's another line which...
The little line, the joke, what are you looking at?
Would you stop looking at us like that, you mad one-eyed bastard.
That's it.
Everything about that, and again, the way the line is delivered. And I think that's one of the... I've been a novelist for 36 years. I've been writing novels, and I've been a screenwriter for a far shorter time. And still, if you ask me what I do, I think I write novels. and that's just you on your own. But the collaborative nature of film is something that's just priceless. It really is. And I do think about that scene an awful lot, because I think everything comes together in there. There's writing, there's the role of the script advisor, there's the role of the director, the lighting, everything, and the actors. I love it.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been brilliant talking to you. Really good talking to you. Yeah.
Before we finish off today, let's take a minute or two to pause with Owen O'Kane, who has some great advice on how we can be kind to our mind.
My name's Owen O'Kane. I'm a psychotherapist, Sunday Times best-selling author and former NHS lead for mental health. And today I'm going to be talking about anger. Now, anger again is one of these emotions that we don't talk about often enough. But it's important to start by saying anger is a really normal emotion. It's normal to get wound up by people sometimes. It's normal to get irritated by circumstances and by life. This is part of the human experience. However, it is difficult when anger isn't regulated or it's not controlled properly, because that can lead to all sorts of difficulties. So first of all, why do we get angry? Well, I call these trigger moments, and it's often important to recognise when you've been triggered. So very often something can happen in life that triggers you, but the response may have nothing to do with what's going on in that moment. So for example, someone can insult you, and the insult could be about something that's happened in the past, nothing to do with anything that's going on in the moment. So it's always good to really stop and recognise when you've been triggered. And then when you recognise you've been triggered, you can then make a decision to take a gap, create a space, not to react in the moment. I call this the 10-second rule. Never react in the moment, because it gives you time to think and to process. And then that gives you an opportunity to think, okay, maybe I can let this go. Maybe I can deal with this another time. Now, it's also important to recognise that sometimes when you're angry, it might be that actually the key emotion isn't anger. There might be something else going on. You might be feeling sad, you might be feeling isolated, you might be feeling a bit flat or low. So always remember, because anger can feel like the dominant emotion, it doesn't mean that there aren't other things going on. So always be aware of your anger and always aim to regulate it and manage it as best you can.
AGNI are the local experts on later life. If you or someone you know is struggling to navigate the challenges of life after 50 and need information or advice on benefit entitlements, housing or care for a loved one, call the AGNI advice line in confidence 9 to 5, Monday to Friday on 0808 808 75 75.
That's it for this episode of How's the Form. Hope you'll join us next time.
How's the Form is brought to you by AGNI and is part of the Good Vibrations Over 50s Men's Health Programme, which is funded by Movember.